Yeshua is pacing back and forth, and it's Hanukkah. Now, Hanukkah has 8 days. There's also the Passover season, which has Passover 1 day, and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, 7 days. So 1 and 7, 8 days. Also Sukkot. Sukkot is 7 days, but there's a special additional festival called Shemini Atzeret, which is the 8th day assembly. So there's 3 times of year on the Jewish calendar where there are celebrations, festivals, which have 8 days. And 8, as we talked about, is a kingdom number. And therefore, there is within Judaism an expectation that on one of these festivals, Pesach or Sukkot or Hanukkah, the Passover time, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, or the Feast of Tabernacles, or Hanukkah, Messiah will come and the kingdom will begin. And we need to remember that if we're going to understand this passage right. So Yeshua, where is He? He is in Shlomo's hall. Who's Shlomo? King Solomon. King should come into our mind. Who is the Messiah? He ultimately is Melech HaMashiach, which is King Messiah. So it's Hanukkah. There is a messianic expectation. Yeshua, many of the people, remember what it says earlier, no one has ever healed a blind man who was blind from birth. That's a messianic sign. So there's a messianic expectation. It's Hanukkah. There's even a greater expectation that Messiah might be revealed. And what is Yeshua doing? He's pacing back and forth in the temple area. He is going towards the Holy of Holies, and then He turns around. He goes again, and He turns around. It's almost like He's teasing those who are there. And believe me, the leadership is watching. Why do I say that? Well, look again. We read here, all the verse. And it came about Hanukkah in Jerusalem. It was wintertime, and Yeshua was pacing back and forth in the temple, in Shlomo's hall. And it says, therefore, as a response from this, because of what He was doing, it says, therefore, the Judeans, these leaders, they surrounded Him, and they asked Him, and this is what they said, how long or until when do you keep our soul in suspense? It's an idiom. How long do you lift up our soul? How long do you hold this there? It's like being lifted up and you think it's going to be dropped and it just suspense. How long do you keep us in suspense? If you are the Messiah, remember, there was that schism, that debate, that division. Some were saying He is demon-possessed. Others were saying, hey, no way does a demon, never has a demon, healed the eyes of a man who was born blind. This has got to be Messiah. And then what happens? Hanukkah time and messianic expectation. Where's Messiah? He's in the temple. He's as close as He can get to the Holy of Holies. He's pacing back and forth, and they say, okay, stop keeping us in suspense. If you are the Messiah, tell us plainly. And Yeshua answers, look at verse 25. Yeshua answered and said to them, I have told you, and you do not believe. Now, that word belief is always, we should associate it, belief and faith, tied always to Abraham. They didn't have an Abrahamic faith. Why? Well, what gave Abraham faith? And remember, faith is responding. It's just not believing something, but it's a belief in your heart that has an outcome. Now, we're not saved by that outcome. We're saved by the belief. But the outcome, given time, will most certainly follow. Well, there was no outcome. So Yeshua says, I've told you, you have seen one of the greatest signs. A man born blind, and now he sees. You know the debate. You need to believe. He says, I have told you, but you do not believe. The works which I do in the name of my Father. Now here's very important. Name is synonymous with character. So He says, I do these works. Why? I have my Father's character. He's already talked about how the Father and Him, they are what? They have this unity, and He's going to get more specific about this unity in a moment. So He says, the works that I do in my Father's name. These testify concerning me. But you, He says it again, you will not believe. For you are not out of my sheep. That's what He says. For I have said to you, just as I said to you, the sheep, my voice hears. What He's saying is this: you have not discerned who I am because you're not my sheep. You're not those who know the shepherd. And why don't they know the shepherd? Very simple. Because they do not have prophetic revelation. See, the best way that I can discern the things of God, the best way that I can have illumination, that God can move and I can discern that, is when I know prophetic truth. Yeshua has just said, I am the good shepherd. Look at what I do for my sheep. I lay down my life for my sheep. He's prophesying of what He's going to do. That He's that suffering servant, the first role of Messiah. And He's given evidence by the miracles He's done. But they will not believe because they will not hear, that word here, respond to His voice. He says, and also I know them, that is my sheep, and they follow after me, and I, eternal life, give to them, that they shall never perish. And then it says that expression, forever and ever. Now, He says it twice. They shall never perish into eternity. That's what it says. There's that sure hope of eternal life. And that's what He says. And once again, if we missed it, eternal life, whenever we hear that, we should think of kingdom life. Why? Well, in Hebrew, eternal life would be Chaye Olam. That word Olam, well, Olam can mean the world. It can mean all of time or eternity. And there's a connection between eternity. When this world enters into eternity, it will be the kingdom. So Messiah, in many different ways that these leaders should have known, He's talking about the kingdom. But they were not discerning that. Why? Because their teaching was inferior. They did not understand prophetic truth, which allowed them to discern the kingdom, what He was talking about, because they were so focused on the world. See, when our focus is success in this world, getting the desires of this world and making them our own, when that happens, we won't have discernment. So He says, you're not trying to listen to the right shepherd, and therefore you're not my sheep, because you don't respond, you don't act in the right way. So what happens? Well, look at it very carefully. We see here in verse 28, after He says, and I, eternal life, give to them, and they what? They will not perish forever, and no one will seize them from my hand. Now, we're going to get into something that's so important, and all has to do with a proper understanding of Messiah. Is Messiah speaking truth, or does He lie? What has He promised? When He talks about that kingdom life, He uses the expression eternal life. Now, what is eternal life? Not a hard question. It is life without end. It is life that is with God forever and ever. Now, eternal life cannot be altered. If it's eternal life and it ceases to be eternal life, we have a serious problem. And that's why Messiah says something so important. He's going to reveal that our eternal security is not based upon us. It's based upon the power and the authority of God. Now, I was teaching last night in another location, and we were talking about the fact that God delivered the children of Israel into the hands of their enemy. And this term hand has two meanings. They're related. Power and authority. So when He speaks about the hand of God. We're